Hey everybody, welcome back to the Hellacious Hero Returns. I am Hellacious Hero Joe. And today, if you looked at the title sequence, I want to do something a little bit different. It's something I've wanted to do for a long time on this channel. I never really did it before, but if you look up at the banner, I have all these things that I'm passionate about, right? And metal's up there is one of those things. I want to do a full episode. This is more like a podcast. It's not a video. It's just me, right, talking, and there's a banner in the background. And I just want to kind of talk about heavy metal in general, my introduction. Before I dive in, I do have another podcast channel. It's called A Matter of Life and Maiden. It's on YouTube. I initially started out with my best friend back in 2018. We did a lot of episodes. We did all the studio albums up to the Book of Souls and the live albums with some of those studio albums over the years, like for Power Slave, Live After Death, we talked about that. For Seven Son, we talked about Made in England. We talked about En Vivo. We talked about the Book of Souls live chapter, so on and so forth. And then with things, him and I just not being able to coordinate and get together these past couple years, I've kind of decided to do things a little bit differently and record a couple episodes on there by myself. So check that out if you get a chance. Again, it's A Matter of Life and Maiden on YouTube, named after the A Matter of Life and Death album from Iron Maiden. But anyway, today on the Hellacious Hero Returns, I want to talk about Judas Priest. And I want to rank their studio albums. I'm not going to include any live stuff in here, any supplemental material. Just the 19 studio albums. Their 19th, Invisible Shield, just came out earlier this year, so that's going to be included in here. And like I said, I want to talk about metal in general. I just did a podcast episode on the A Matter of Life and Maiden YouTube page, where I talked about my 25 favorite bands outside of Iron Maiden, and Judas Priest was number 3 on the list. So they're pretty prominent for me. Getting into metal myself, I mean, Iron Maiden opened the gateway and the floodgates for me to dive into this kind of music. Made me really appreciate hard rock a lot more, classic rock a lot more, heavy metal, even different tributaries of metal, like black metal a little bit, death metal a little bit, those kind of things, prog metal, like I said. So bands like Queensrÿche, Dream Theater, King Crimson, Jethro Tull. You know, grew up always liking Pink Floyd, grew up always liking Van Halen and those kind of guys, but Maiden got me obsessed with this kind of music and really got me into playing guitar and stuff too in the early 2000s, so it's kind of like, as a guitar player, I feel like once I started to really get into that whole thing as well, combining that with the music I was listening to, I wanted to emulate all these guys from these different bands that I'm talking about. So for me, Priest, modern day, and, you know, in particular, more recently, they've been a band that I've really loved, especially when Faulkner joined. I've always loved KK and Glenn too, don't get me wrong, but Richie just adds this exuberance and this, you know, liveliness to the band, and he's just amazing. And KK's out doing his own thing too with KK's Priest now, which is awesome too. So, two cool bands, but Priest is amazing. Halford's amazing. I mean, one of my favorite heavy metal vocalists, hard rock vocalists of all time. But, you know, getting into heavy metal, like when I was a kid, getting into it in my late teens, like the early 2000s, you know, when it came to Maiden or Priest, it was like you had to pick, like, who's your band? You can't like both. It was like this thing going on, like who's better, you know, and you would get into these feuds with people. But I said this in the other podcast I just did a couple days ago on the other channel, A Matter of Life and Maiden. You know, it's like Star Wars and Star Trek. It's like you're picking between two amazing science fiction, you know, media franchises. They're both amazing, but for me, like, Star Wars is always going to win. It's just like Iron Maiden will always beat out Judas Priest. But with that being said, I've come to appreciate them a heck of a lot more over the last 10 or 15 years than I did previously. It was almost like, yeah, I listened to their classic stuff. You know, I said this, like, you know, You Got Another Thing Coming was on Guitar Hero. They had some really cool stuff like that, but outside of that, I never really dived into their work truly and honestly until the mid to late 2000s and then early 2010s, when, like, Rob came back in the band and Angel of Retribution and stuff came out. So now I'm like, they're one of my favorite bands of all time, obviously, like number 3 on the list outside of Maiden. But I want to rank their LPs today, and I'm going to start off with my least favorite, number 19, 2001's Demolition. with Tim Ripper Owens on vocals. This one, first of all, the cover is kind of like bland. It's just Demolition and like this weird lettering with like a little bit of blood spatter on the cover. It's nothing crazy. There's no Hellions, and Rob Halford's kind of like Creature Creations that he made, like their mascots and the angels and those kind of things. They're not there, so I don't know. It's just there's something about it. It's kind of loud. And don't get me wrong, like none of these albums are like horrible per se. They're just some that are better than others, and a lot that are like even better. So Demolition is at the very bottom for me. There's some decent tracks on it. I like One on One. I like Machine Man. I like Jekyll and Hyde. Those are some highlights for me. They're pretty decent. They're cool. They're different. And I like Tim Ripper Owens. Like, he's a great singer. He's an amazing singer. He's awesome. But I kind of compare this to when like Blaze Bayley joined the band when he joined Iron Maiden. It's like, you got this new singer who is not, one of the original members or one of the members who, did some of their best material, and obviously people just compare, and that's how it is. And that's unfortunate for Tim, because I think they could have done at least one more album, but, he leaves, and Rob comes back in, 2003, and then they come out with Angel of Retribution, so it's unfortunate for Ripper Owens. He had a really good career with Iced Earth, did a lot of other projects on his own, and he's with KK's Priest now, and they sound great. They have 2 records out, and they're very cool. Check them out. So nothing against Tim Ripper Owens, but Demolition is my least favorite. I don't think it's interesting. I don't think it's quite as refined or powerful. It's very like new metal sounding. I don't really care for it that much. So moving on from that, I won't spend too much time on Demolition. Coming at number 18, obviously, is the other Tim Ripper Owens album, Jugulator, from 1997. This one is, a little bit of a step up and improvement in quality, I think. It's just, it has some really cool stuff on it. It's almost like trying to compare how, like, Demolition would be Virtual 11 for Maiden, and this would be, like, the X Factor. There's some pretty cool songs on it that are pretty decent. And Cathedral Spires from this record would be, to equate it to Maiden, it would be like their Sign of the Cross, like the missing track, like a hidden gem that's really amazing on this record. And that's my favorite song on the album, Cathedral Spires. I do also like Burn in Hell, Bullet Train, and, the title track's pretty decent. Jugulator, it's different. But again, it's the same kind of more aggressive and harsh vocals from Tim, which, is cool. And that's the thing about Priest that's awesome. Like, they are an ever-evolving band. Like, they always change stuff up. And, for them, this is what they needed in the mid to late 90s and the early 2000s to kind of, like, be different and to kind of fit into that new kind of music that was taking over, alternative rock and grunge and hair metal and those kind of things. But obviously, bands like this experiment, and now look where we are in 2024 with, metal's back in full swing, and it's stronger than ever. I mean, phases, cycles, things come and go. But for that reason, again, like I said, Jugulator is number 18. Now, with that stuff being said, and moving on from that, these albums take a little bit of a step up, too, from the 2 Ripper albums. They're not bad by any means, but these next few, like the next 3 to 4 basically, are kind of in the same kind of niche and vein in terms of my ranking. Like, they could alternate back and forth on any given day. It's just kind of where I'm at right now with them. So number 17 is 1988, 1988's Ram It Down. It's just, it was supposed to be a double album with Turbo. It was going to be called Twin Turbo, but they decided to release Turbo first in 86 and then this in 88, and it's obviously 2 different flavors. It's kind of like one is a lot more melodic and symphonic, and maybe not symphonic's the right word, but more like popular sounding. Synthy is what I meant, more like 80s popular sounding. This one tries to stick to the traditional heavy metal routine. It's just the songs on it are okay, but they're nothing spectacular. Like, I really dig Blood Red Skies, I like the song Heavy Metal, I like Heart of Iron. And, it's okay. Like, I don't find it quite as interesting as some of the other stuff we're going to see. And then moving on from this, number 17, number 16 is Turbo, 1986. Turbo Lover's really cool. Out in the Cold's awesome. I like Locked In. I like Parental Guidance. Cool songs, but nothing like revolutionary. It's not like it's almost Priest is kind of like stagnant to a certain extent here. They're trying to change and experiment and do things differently. 1986's Turbo is kind of like, comparing it to Maiden, like they went a different route too with Somewhere in Time and added synths and things like that. But theirs was like super successful. Turbo is just a different album. I've grown to love it a little bit more over the years, more so than I did previously. I used to hate it, but now there's something cool about it. It's kind of like corny, hokey fun, and it's cool. It is a neat album, but not as successful. They kind of strayed too far from that kind of metal path with this one to be more popular. But if you're looking at it from a package theme, like they were trying to be like, hey, we're going to do a new experimental thing with this record, and then we're going to stick to the traditional heavy stuff with Ram It Down, and then they decided to split it up, probably to make more money, obviously. But that's kind of why those two are kind of like neck and neck with each other there. Coming in after that, number 15 is Point of Entry. Cool album. There's some really cool stuff on here. This is a little bit of a step up from those last two. Desert Plains is amazing. This came out in 1981. Desert Plains is amazing. Heading Out to the Highway is an amazing riff. It's a really cool song. I like Solar Angels a lot. But again, it's lacking something. It's a little too light. It's not heavy enough. Like this is Priest. Like it's a little too light. It's like they backed off on some of the guitar stuff. They backed off on some of the riffage. It's not that there aren't any good melodies or guitar playing and stuff like this. These guys are professional musicians, obviously, but just not as powerful as I would have liked. I think it's a cool album. It's different, but again, it's kind of light. It's a little bit too light for me. It's like Priest light. It's not even as strong as their earlier stuff, which we'll get to later. But to compare, it's almost like a slightly heavier version of Rock-a-Rolla, which is more hard rock sounding. And it's just not quite as complete. I think it could have been a lot heavier. I think it could have been a lot more melodic in some places, but it's just not. So I just mentioned it. It leads me into number 14, Rock-a-Rolla, 1974, their first album, their debut album. Again, this isn't really real Priest. This is more like I think it's a good album, I do. But I don't think it's really Priest as we know them. Like, this was kind of like their first record. It was very more hard rock sounding, prog rock sounding. Cool album. I really like the reissue art with like the metal beast on the front with wings. It's really cool as opposed to the soda cap. They're both neat, but I dig the reissue, especially with the Judas Priest cool cursive logo, their original logo. That was awesome. But again, just not really Priest for me. I do like a couple songs on here, like Deep Freeze is cool, Run of the Mill is cool. It's neat, but it's not for me what Priest is about. It's not really where they've shined over the years. So yeah, a really cool introductory album, but not one that really defined the genre either. And we'll get to the ones that did, but this isn't the album that Priest is known for. It's like some of these other earlier ones coming, honestly, really immediately after this in terms of like how they released them. But we'll talk about those here as we go. So coming in at number 13 then is Nostradamus from 2008. I know a lot of people hate this one. This is the last album with KK Downing. The thing that's cool about Nostradamus is it's a conceptual album, and it's super long. I mean, it's almost 2 hours, like an hour and 40-something minutes. So, like, to digest it, I feel like you kind of have to listen to it. And going back to talk about, like, some of the stuff I talked about on A Matter of Life and Maiden with their concept album, Seventh Son of a Seventh Son. You can take some of the songs on Seventh Son of a Seventh Son and listen to them by themselves, and they still sound good. Or you can listen to them and the whole concept, and it flows. Either way, it's awesome. See, this is kind of where Priest kind of isn't, this album, Nostradamus, isn't like that. I feel like you kind of have to listen to the album all the way through to really appreciate it as a whole, to get the whole concept. Because picking bits and pieces of the songs out sometimes in this, like some of them are just like musical interludes, and it's almost like a movie you're watching or a play, or it has some soundtrack theme vibes in it. So, in order to really get the full picture, you have to listen to the whole concept of the record. I mean, the title track's awesome.
Future of Mankind, Persecution, Death.
A lot of really neat, different shifting, moving pieces in this record, and I feel like it has to be appreciated in its totality in order to really get the vibe. Listening to the stuff like picking and cherry picking things in and out of it, like you're not going to really get anything concise. But then again, sometimes it is a chore to sit down and listen to this all the way through for an hour and 40 minutes. But I think that's what they were going for. It's almost like you're going to watch a play or going to a movie theater and watching a movie, and it really does have that cinematic, theatrical feel to it. But it is, I mean, if you're not into it and you don't want to sit down, you just want to put a tune on and like rip a couple songs from a record that you really like, this isn't the album for you. Like this one you have to really sit down and digest. And again, it's ranked this high for me because it's Priest experimenting again and really, really trying to do something different. And I think they did awesome with it. I think it's a really kick-ass album. But again, it doesn't really offer something for everyone. If you like to sit down and you want to go on like a journey through a cinematic musical experience or a soundtrack feel experience, like if you're putting on, Blade Runner soundtrack from Vangelis and you're listening to that whole thing, or you're throwing on like the Conan the Barbarian soundtrack from like Basil Polydoros, like that's a journey. Like you have to sit down and digest that whole thing to really get the feel of it. That's what Nostradamus tries to do, and I think it doesn't really touch the base for all the Priest fans because, like I said, a lot of Priest fans kind of just want to throw on a song or two or half of an album and be like, that was awesome. I got what I needed to do out. I got to express what I needed to hear, and that was that. It is kind of like an event. Like you have to sit down and take an hour and 45 minutes out of your day to listen to it. And that can be kind of arduous and kind of like putting in work for some people. So I get why a lot of people pan it. But I see what they were trying to do, and I honestly, personally think it's cool. Like, I've listened to it multiple times. When it first came out, I didn't care for it. Now I really enjoy it. I think it's a pretty solid album. After Nostradamus, coming in at number 12 for me is Redeemer of Souls from 2014. This is the first record with Richie Faulkner on guitar, and I think it's awesome. I think all the 3 albums I did with Richie so far have been amazing. The cover for this is awesome. It's really cool. The Redeemer on the front. It has an angel vibe and the Hellion vibe and all those different characters that Rob Halford talks about and he's created. So for me, it's an amazing record. Richie solos are great. He sounds great with Glenn. The songs are very like fantasy or mythology focused, which I dig. I think it's neat. Love Halls of Valhalla, love Sword of Damocles, Dragonaut's amazing, Battle Cry's awesome. The entire record is solid. It's a solid album. And the only reason it is kind of like in this midway point sort of on the list is because these other ones coming are just unbelievable. This is a great record though. This is a really solid, strong record. And this is the record that came out after Priest was like, yeah, we're going to hang it up, we're done, we're going to go do the Epitaph tour. Richie's kind of just joining us as a touring guitar player for Epitaph, and then we're going to hang it up. And then, they've all said in interviews, like Rob, Richie, Ian, Scott Travis, Glenn, everybody in the band, they're like, after we went out and did Epitaph, we were like, we want to go into the studio and make a new album, because this is awesome, we're just having a ball. So they went in the studio and made this. And then they toured with this. Went back in the studio and made Firepower, which we'll talk about later. And then again, as the thing goes on. But it's so cool we're getting Priest music, and this is honestly, 10 years old this year already. It's hard to believe, but man, what a kick-ass album. Richie Faulkner, like I said, brought so much new life into the band and everything and reinvigorated them. And I think he's done a hell of a job filling KK's shoes. And he's honestly becoming a perennial fixture. These last 3 albums with him are damn good. They're some of the best in the catalog as far as I'm concerned, and this is the first of those. So, hats off to Richie for that. Hell of a guy, hell of a player, and amazing songwriting capabilities too. So, and if you get a chance to check out his side project or his other band, Elegant Weapons, really cool. They came out with an album last year. It's really awesome. Horns for Halo, check them out. Awesome band. But moving on from Redeemer of Souls, that was number 12. Number 11, Angel of Retribution, the return of Rob Halford. Came out in 2005. I remember listening to this when I was in college. It was like 2008 when I first got my hands on it, because like I said, I went back and got into Priest a little bit later after Maiden and everything. But I really dug this record. I think it's awesome. I love Hellrider. I love Demonizer. Eulogy's awesome. Judas Rising is fucking amazing. Loch Ness 13-minute epic is really cool. It's different for Priest, and it's kind of, if you look at that Loch Ness thing, you can kind of see like they took bits and pieces of that, and they're like, I wonder if we take this and do a concept album. Then you can see where they started to get more progressive and experimental, and then obviously the album after that was Nostradamus. So it makes a lot of sense. But the cover art is amazing. It's an angel, the Italian angel with the wings, the same one that's on the Painkiller cover. Really, really cool, and an awesome like return for Halford, and an awesome like album that put them back on the map as heavy metal pioneers for the new millennium. Angel of Retribution, great album. After that, coming in at number 10, Killing Machine in the UK and the rest of the world, and Hellbent for Leather in the United States. This was released in 78 in the UK and Europe, and 79 in the United States. So, really cool record. This one is kind of like popular. It's one of their most popular albums. I don't know how to kind of like rate it, but it's I like it a lot. It's just weird. It's weird with the Killing Machine, the Hellbent for Leather releases. One coming out the year prior to the US release. That being said, I mean, I like both of those tracks. I like Hellbent for Leather. I like Killing Machine. I like Running Wild. I like Evil Fantasies. Burning Up's pretty cool. Delivering the Goods is cool. Take on the World, etc., etc. And then there's that really cool cover of the Green Manalishi on here from Fleetwood Mac that they do. The Green Manalishi with the two-prong crown, which is awesome. I mean, like it's a really cool cover. I think it was originally only on the Hellbent for Leather US release, and then I think later releases of Killing Machine had it on there. But those are for the most part the tracks that I dig from this. But like I said, I mean, it's kind of like, I don't know, it falls where it's at, like in the middle of the pack here for a reason for me. I just think that it's good, but for me there's just better stuff. And with that being said, the better stuff would be 1980s British Steel at number 9. This is like Judas Priest is Zeppelin 4. This is like the most popular record that they have. Most of the songs on here are like the radio-friendly stuff that people heard and they know and they love. It's Breaking the Law, Living After Midnight, Metal Gods, Rapid Fire, those songs. This record is really cool. I dig it a lot. I think it's not quite as strong as some of the stuff we're going to get to. And again, it's a mixed bag. It's right in there with Killing Machine. Like, it's just one of these ones that I feel like it's really cool. There's a lot of cool riffs on it, and some of those songs I mentioned, like, Breaking the Law is awesome. The riff is amazing. Living After Midnight's catchy as hell. I love the Load It. I mean, it's so cool. Metal Gods is fun. Rapid Fire is cool. Amazing guitar work, amazing instrumentation in this. But again, it's just a record that is popular. And I don't know, it's not that I don't like popular stuff. It's just that there's records out here that are just so much more polished and unique and progressive than British Steel. Again, this one has kind of like a popular sound. No disrespect to Judas Priest. Like, this thing is kick-ass. But it has a lot of that radio-friendly metal on it. Not in a bad way. It's kind of an album where everybody likes it. Like, if you tell somebody, hey, what's your, like, a casual Priest fan, like, what album do you like? They're going to be like, British Steel. I like Breaking the Law and Living After Midnight. It's just how it is. I like the more obscure stuff. The stuff that's more proggy and, just more experimental. And this is kind of like, in a way, not that. It's great and it's excellent, but it's really straightforward. Yeah, so moving on from British Steel, like I said, it's the one that everybody knows. It's like one of their most popular albums. It has all the, popular songs on it, or the ones that are on the radio. Number 8's Defenders of the Faith from 1984. This was like a really cool and different album, and we'll talk about the album that came before it, which is, you'll see where it's at on the list, but Defenders of the Faith was really cool. The front of it had like this kind of like lion robot thing, reminded me of like Voltron or like Transformers when I was a kid, right? In my teens getting into this, and Just an awesome cover art. Super cool song. I love Free Will Burning, that song. I love Jawbreaker. And then my favorite track on this thing is The Sentinel. That's some Killer Priest, progressive rock, metal stuff. Just epicness. I mean, it's awesome. It's awesome. So that's Defenders of the Faith. Moving on from that, number 7, Sin After Sin. These next couple, including this one, Sin After Sin, a little bit of a notch above the previously mentioned ones, from basically Redeemer of Souls down to Defenders. These are even a little bit higher for me. Sin After Sin is just awesome. Came out in 1977. The cover art's really cool. It's like an old mausoleum or some kind of like crypt, or I don't even know what it is, but it's super cool. There's a skull on the front of it, some shadowy figures, very like cryptic looking, but interesting. Very like antiquated, has that kind of like almost classic mythology, kind of like Dark Ages feel to it. I think it's really cool. I like it a lot. Some of the songs on this are just unbelievable. Like Sinner is amazing. Diamonds and Rust, Dissident Aggressor, phenomenal. I think Slayer covered that years later, but that song itself is amazing. Let Us Pray, aka Call for the Priest, unbelievable. And freaking Starbreaker, man. Starbreaker is a hell of a song. Unbelievable record. This thing is one of those albums, like I talked about earlier, that defines heavy metal. This is like blueprints for like proto heavy metal. This is the stuff that Sabbath was doing, and some of these early Priest albums, this one included in that, are the blueprint, and they are amazing. Now, had a hard time with these next two. Now, number 7, number 6, and number 5, we could probably interchange these all depending on the day and how I'm feeling. But right now I'm into like newer Priest stuff. So coming in at number 6 is Firepower from 2018. I love this entire record. Like, I love the riffs on it. This is the second one with Richie Faulkner. It's like what they did with Redeemer of Souls on steroids. Like, it's a very fantasy-focused album, but the riffs are even more polished. The lyrics are even better. The songs just gel together more. There's tunes in there and hooks in there that harken back to 80s Priest. I mean, it's just a very strong, amazing record. Some of my favorites are the actual title track. I like Flamethrower a lot. I like Necromancer. I like Spectre. I like Rising from Ruins. I like Guardians. I mean, the whole record is amazing. Children of the Sun. Like, this album, when it came out, I had listened to Redeemer of Souls, wore it out, loved it, and then I kind of like gravitated away from Priest. I wasn't listening to him a lot that much, and then like everybody was raving about Firepower, and I'm like, ooh, what's this? And I remember when I bought it on CD and threw it in, I was like, damn, this was definitely worth the wait. And the cover art's really cool. It's like some mech monster with rockets getting shot out of him, and I think Richie Faulkner's like tattoo artist drew it or something like that. It's just super cool, awesome, straightforward heavy metal album with that progressive edge that Priest has been doing since Rob came back into the band, kind of experimenting with, like I said, on Loch Ness, on Angel of Retribution, that record, then doing a full concept album that was way out of left field, super proggy, doing even more kind of like fantasy-themed, mythological themed lyrics on Redeemer of Souls, and then this is kind of, again, that kind of mythological theme. I mentioned Necromancer, I talked about Spectre, like some of these really cool, just fantasy thematic themes. And the thing about these records is there's something on it for everyone. You don't have to take an hour and 40 minutes out of your day to sit down and listen to these. You can throw on these tracks and they're standalone amazing, and as the album whole in total, the way they flow into each other, amazing. Firepower at number 6. Coming in at number 5, their latest release in 2024, Invincible Shield. This record, I didn't think Firepower could be topped. I really didn't. And this reminds me of like Book of Souls when it came out, and then Senjutsu came out in 2021 from Iron Maiden. Like, I thought Book of Souls was like, okay, the next album's going to be a little bit less, it's not going to be quite as good, but Senjutsu was even better, in my opinion, than Book of Souls, and I feel like it's the same thing with this. I feel like Invincible Shield is even better than Firepower. It's just, again, I love every song on the record. The title track is amazing. The singles, every single on this is amazing. Panic Attack is amazing. The Serpent and the King is amazing. Giants in the Sky, Devil in Disguise. I don't even, like, Gates of Hell, like, every song on this album is killer. The solos are more melodic. Like, I know Richie said he kind of planned some of these out more instead of just kind of going into the studio and kind of just like improvising like he usually does. And you can hear it. You know, sometimes that's a bad thing. This is a good thing. This record is probably their most progressive thing probably since Nostradamus, in a good way. Like, this, they have just become, much like Maiden has kind of evolved and become more of a prog metal band since the reunion. It's the same thing with Judas Priest. Like, they're on that same trend. And I think Richie brings just so much flavor and gusto to the band. It's unbelievable. And this record is one of their best. I mean, number 5. This is top 5 Priest, and it's their latest album. I mean, and that's my opinion. You know, people might not agree with me, but I think it's damn good. I think it's damn good. And like I said, Sin After Sin, Firepower, and Invisible Shield could change, you know, positions here or there between the 7, 6, and 5 slot, depending on the day and how I feel. But right now, this is where I'm at with it in June 2024. Invisible Shield, number 5. Amazing album. Number 4, Stained Class, from 1978. Again, another album where every song is awesome. Like, this is a quintessential heavy metal album. This is like one of the defining factors. This is a couple years before Iron Maiden released their debut. I think this is like one of those ones, and this comes right after Sin, where it's like, okay, Priest is really finding their footing, their identity, who they are, their musical ideas, their, you know, their persona as a band. Stained Class is that record. Exciter, amazing. Amazing. One of the coolest metal tracks of all time. The title track, Stained Class, amazing. Saints in Hell, Hero's End, the entire record is phenomenal. The cover art's cool. I mean, it's just awesome. And the cool squiggly line logo now becomes the Judas Priest official logo that they've used on pretty much every record since then. Besides Nostradamus, they went kind of back to like this old, just traditional typeface, which, you know, it is what it is. But most of the records since then have used this, you know, 95% of them. So, amazing album. Amazing album. Coming in at number 3, and this one cements what I said earlier about, you know, albums that define the genre. Sad Wings of Destiny from 1976. The album before Sin After Sin. It's one of my favorite Judas Priest albums of all time. Number 3. The cover art is amazing. I think it's absolutely phenomenal. This is like the first, if you're looking, you know, outside of the Black Sabbath stuff, and you're looking at like the stuff they did with like Volume 4 and Paranoid and Master of Reality and Sabbath Bloody Sabbath and that kind of stuff, coming in a couple years before and right around the same time as some of this, man, Sad Wings of Destiny is unbelievable. Victim of Change is one of the greatest Priest songs of all time. Ripper's amazing. That's where Tim Ripper Owens gets his name. Jack the Ripper stuff. Tyrant, Genocide, Epitaph, Dreamer, Deceiver, Deceiver the song itself, and Island of Domination. This record is fucking amazing from top to bottom, start to finish. This thing is untouchable, in my opinion. It's just one of the coolest quintessential heavy metal albums. And for me, if you're comparing it to Maiden, and I know I do this a lot with some things, this is like their Number of the Beast. This is like their Number of the Beast. This thing is amazing, in my opinion. And maybe some people disagree with me, but I think this is that album where it's like, ooh, this is who we're going to be. This is what we're going to sing about. This is what we're going to do. This is our identity. That's one of the albums. So, amazing album for heavy metal, for Priest, for the genre, everything. Coming in at number 2, Screaming for Vengeance from 1982. There is no other amazing tandem opener on albums besides like Aces High and 2 Minutes to Midnight, Caught Somewhere in Time and the Wasted Years, you know, song like the Maiden stuff, than this album. Hellion into Electric Eye never gets old for me. I fucking love that transition from the Hellion instrumental passage into Electric Eye. I think it's amazing. Still to this day, one of the coolest openers on any Priest album. You Got Another Thing Coming is absolutely amazing. The title track, Screaming for Vengeance, is stellar. Bloodstone, unbelievable. This record from top to bottom is just phenomenal. This, for me, would kind of be like their Power Slave, I would say. This would be like their Power Slave. It's that album that just has everything. It's epic. it's probably the height of their popularity, and I think, it's just, in my opinion, obviously not their best album, right? Not my favorite anyway. This could be their best album. You could say Screaming for Vengeance is Priest's best album, hands down, and I couldn't argue with you. Like, it's definitely up there. Definitely at least top 5 for some people, top 3, and for me it's number 2. But the reason why my number 1 is where it is because it's really the first album that I digested when I became a metal fan from Priest, and that is 1990's Painkiller, the last album with Halford before he left. And the first was Scott Travis, who's been in the band now for almost 35 years now, since this album. 34 years. So, like, this is amazing. This is like, I don't know how to explain it. It's almost like Peace of Mind, I guess you could say, from Maiden. It's like they got their guy, they got their drummer. The rest of the band's in sync. They're churning out amazing stuff for the next 18 years until, KK leaves. Besides the albums with Tim, which, Scott's drumming on, it's amazing. It's the same thing with the 90s crap with Bruce, No Prayer for the Dying, Fear of the Dark, the Blaze stuff. Nico was still amazing. Same thing with Scott, still amazing. Amazing drummer. Best drummer they ever had. Better than Les Binks, better than the other guys they had in the band. They've had drummers in and out over the years who have only been on, an album here or there. Dave Holland, all those guys. But this is the number 1 for me. This is like the best thing ever. I don't know how to compare it or where it would be with Maiden, but this for me is up there with like Power Slave, A Matter of Life and Death, Senjutsu, some of my favorite albums. This is one of my favorite metal albums of all time, Painkiller. This and, like I said, Screaming for Vengeance, Sad Wings of Destiny, those albums. The stuff with Richie, these last 3 albums he's done. But the title track is amazing. Hell Patrol's amazing. Metal Meltdown, Nightcrawler, One Shot at Glory, Between the Hammer and the Anvil is amazing. Even the instrumental, Battle Hymn, is awesome. It just fits in here. It fits. And it's like it's one of the best metal albums of the 90s, in my opinion. Like traditional metal albums. This is like, I think Maiden's albums in the 90s weren't that great. This is one that's amazing. It's on par with, like, I would put this up there with, like, obviously Metallica's Black Album. I think this is better than the Black Album. I would put it up there with Dio's Lock Up the Wolves. I think this is better than Lock Up the Wolves. And that's what I mean. It's one of the best. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. It's an amazing record from an amazing band who I've come to appreciate even more over the last 10 or 15 years. You don't have to choose between Maiden and Priest. You can like both of them. So that's my ranking. I'm going to throw up the ranking at the end of this video so you can see where everything sits. But I just want to say thanks everybody for listening to the Hellacious Hero Returns. I am Hellacious Hero Joe. Keep listening to your metal music, doing the things that you love to do, playing your guitar, playing your instruments, reading your comic books, collecting your collectibles, spinning your vinyls, doing all that cool stuff. Just do you. Keep having a good time out there. Again, I greatly appreciate everybody tuning in to this channel. And please like, share, or subscribe if you haven't. And I'll see everybody next time. I'm thinking about next time potentially doing a ranking of the Black Sabbath studio albums, including the Heaven and Hell LP they did with Dio before he passed. So that could be coming down the pipeline pretty soon. Not sure when that's going to be, but that's the plan. So everybody take care. Thanks again.